Okay, good afternoon, Chairman. I can confirm it is now 4 o'clock. The live stream has commenced and we are ready to start the meeting.
Thank you, Sammy. Good afternoon and welcome to the Development Control Meeting for the 17th of June 2020. I would like to advise that today we'll be using Zoom to provide a live stream to members of the public. Please can we ask that you all bear with us while we are dealing with numerous internet connections and sometimes they may cause some slight delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that today we have Councillor Graham Carpenter acting as substitute for Councillor Lorne. Sammy Wintle will be your Zoom host for today and Dean Mims will be the officer presenting during the meeting. Matt Seven is here to offer IT support if required and Sammy Wintle will be clerking the meeting today. During the meeting, all participants except for the chairman will be muted and this should remain during the whole of the meeting unless you have asked to speak. May I take this opportunity to remind members that all members are invited to participate in the meeting, but we would ask that you use your raise the hand button, which can be found at the bottom of the participant screen, should you wish to speak. The chairman will be notified of your request and he will then invite you to speak. Once you have been called to speak, please could we ask you to unmute yourself and then once spoken, mute yourself again. Anyone who has telephoned into the meeting will be invited to speak after all those who have raised their hands have spoken. When asking a question, please could we ask members to refer to page numbers within the report and agenda for ease to officers. If we have to adjourn the meeting, the chairman would advise of this and the anticipated length of adjournment. When voting on an application, this will be undertaken by a roll call of those members present. Once your name is called, please unmute yourself and respond accordingly. When confirming the minutes and noting delegated decisions, unless any member raises an objection on these matters, these will be confirmed by assent. Members can only partake in voting on an application if they have been present for the entire discussion on an application. Thank you, Chair. If we could now undertake a roll call of members present. Councillor Anderson.
Present.
Councillor Bird. Councillor Bird.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Fairhead.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Flaxman-Taylor.
Present.
Councillor Hammond.
Present.
Councillor Carpenter.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mogford. Now I know Councillor Mogford was having issues getting on, so if he joins, I will let you know during the meeting. Councillor Myers.
Present.
Councillor Wainwright.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Present.
Councillor T. Wright.
Present.
Councillor B. Wright.
Present.
Thank you. Chairman, I can confirm that officers present at the meeting today. We have Dean Mims, Planning Manager, Robert Tate, Planning Officer, Sammy Wintle, Corporate Services Manager, David Gleason, Development Director, and we should have Caroline Watling, our Monitoring Officer, joining us, but hasn't been able to attend as yet, but I will let you know once she is in attendance. Chairman, I can confirm that we do have external participants today who have joined the meeting to discuss the planning application to be considered by members. Any external attendees will be called forward to speak at the appropriate time and will remain as attendees during the meeting. I may just point out that external attendees are only allowed to speak when called forward, and to confirm there will be no entitlement for any external questions today. Chairman, we can now start the agenda items.
Thank you, Sammy. So we move to item number 1. Have we any apologies for absence, please?
Chairman, I can confirm we have apologies from Councillor Lawn.
Thank you, Sammy. Item number 2, Havley, any declarations of interest, please?
Chairman, I can confirm I have no hands raised.
Thank you. We now move to item number 3, the minutes of the meeting, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of May 2020 as a true and accurate record. Everybody happy with those minutes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Chairman, I can confirm I have no hands raised, so if there's no member objections, these can be taken on assent. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. We now move to item number 4, which is Stave Road, land north of Martham, Great Yarmouth. Just to confirm that this item contains 2 applications and there will be 2 separate votes undertaken by a roll call. So at this point, I now hand over to Dean Minns, Planning Manager.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just trying to, where's the, can everybody see the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get the laser up here at the moment, just to sort of take you through. Can you see the red lines side, or can you just see the application numbers? Can I just,
Yes.
which can you see? Can you see the application?
Just the application numbers.
Just the numbers.
Right, here we are. So thank you. After that little glitch, so the application that we're looking at here is the first one on the line, which I'm just going to show you, which is where the outlined in red, and this is the application site for 47 energy efficient dwellings, including associated open space, drainage infrastructure, vehicular accesses, and associated highway improvements. The second application I'll move on to in a moment is the formulation of the new highway junction between Stave Road and Somerton Road. Now, in terms of the junction, it is actually the recommendation is going to be here that certainly you can't approve the residential development without the new junction, the revised junction there, which is, as you can see on your agenda, which is 606F. I'm just running through again. So just to put it in context, this is the site outlined in red. We've got the Scout Hall just at this point here where I'm sort of where the laser pointer is. We've got residential properties actually sort of front onto Stave Road at this point. Dam Back Lane runs down the side here. And also within that is this sort of right of way, which is Martham 3 that you've got actually mentioned in your agenda. Again, residential properties running along the side here. Over to the side, so this is the north of Somerton Road. Again, we've got on Dam, we've got residential properties running down here as well. There's a strip of open space or land between the application site and these residential properties at this point here. So you can just sort of see where the laser pointer is at the moment. And then 2 dwellings at the back here, then sort of backing onto the application site. Just going forward, I'll just come back again because just to show an aerial photograph here. And again, just sort of showing the context of the site and just to bring you alive. So there's the Scout Hall again there at that point. We've then got the residential properties fronting onto Stave Road. Damgate Back Lane runs down there, and Damgate Lane runs along the side here. Just across here, you can also see the school, which is just sort of to the east of the site. And again, members will be familiar with having read the report there, that we've received a number of objections about the sort of particularly traffic in association with this proposed residential development and mingling with the school, particularly obviously at sort of picking, setting off points and picking up points as well there. So just going back again, Scout hut in here, you can then sort of see what's being proposed in here. And I'll come on to this new access just in a moment as we sort of run into the site. You've got new car parking for the Scout hut at this point here. So I think it's about 7 spaces you can count. You will then run in. There's about a 5.5 meter new access road running into the site, and 1.5 to 2 meter sort of footpaths running down the side there. This point here, the footpath then splits and then joins back as this sort of circular rhythm around the actual around the site itself. Also running through there, you can sort of see this new sort of planting area, sort of giving us sort of a reasonably attractive sort of entrance into the site. Then outlined in green around here as well, there's also part of the sustainable drainage systems, sort of abutting the new highway. And this would be sort of built to adoptable standards running around the site. We've also got at this point here areas of open space and open space at the back here as well. And to look at sort of zooming closer on some of these aspects as well, I can just sort of members within their committee reports from page 34 onwards. You've also got this sort of maps and there's aerial photographs that are shown here as well, which are just to sort of give you a bit more detail. So it's an assortment of residential properties around the site there, making up this sort of 46 dwellings of 3 bedroom, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, and 4 bedroom. There's also an element of affordable housing on there, as it says within your report as well. And just sort of chucking on the side here as well, just to give you a little bit more, you can sort of see one at this point, whereas one is sort of running around here. You can sort of see the existing trees and hedgerows. And as I go back to the aerial photograph shortly, you can see there's very little actually on the site itself in terms of trees and hedgerows, but they are around the perimeter of the site. Some are outside the ownership of the applicant there, but they do exist. And also we've got some down the side here as well. New planting is also proposed, as you can sort of see around the site. And that's a little bit more sort of detail in this area here. 2, that's then pointing to this sort of central and northern public open space that I've just mentioned in there as well. And within this area here, you've also got sort of where the sort of drainage lagoon for the site would be. Now, this is all based upon a sustainable drainage system as well, to sort of to make this sort of in accordance with the latest guidance on it, and also to help with the efficiency of the site and make it more sort of sustainable from that point of view. Also, if I just bend across there as well, you can see it's mentioned within your committee report about having an access along this sort of right of way there, actually from the site as well, and with the rights of way officer from the county council requesting that it would be beneficial to actually have a sort of a new access coming from the open space, leading on to the right of way that runs down the side there. And this plan now shows that being proposed at that point as well. Just running forward again on that, we've got within that sort of within that play area, you've also got a sort of a children's play area within this as well, which will be sort of equipped and laid out. Additional landscaping around here as well. In terms of the open space at the moment, it's actually in excess of our requirements in terms of the local plan, but it does actually include this sort of this drainage lagoon in there as well. So, but it does actually meet the sort of the open space requirements and by the local plan in terms of what's if you leave those areas aside as well there. And again, you know, you get this sort of green walkway walking through the site. And that's mentioned at 4 about incidental drainage, incidental green space and residential landscaping running around the site again on there, or to sort of the enhance the visual appearance of the area. 5, we've then got to talk about the sustainable drainage, which I mentioned earlier in there as well. And those and the sustainable drainage will all also include, as I mentioned, this areas beside the road itself. So the runoff from the road runs into those as well. Just going back again to the aerial photograph. So where you saw that the open space was this area here, and then it joins up and runs around the side, joins up to this sort of right of way that runs down the side there. Now this plan now shows you the this is linked into the new revised junction. Now the revised junction came about, and there's this sort of second application, because highways have objected to that access being serving this development, actually coming directly onto Stave Road and then coming out of this in both directions there, and then coming onto Somerton Road. And which is understandable when you sort of look at the junction here, which is certainly if you were to come out of the site and you're trying to look over your right-hand shoulder to get out, and then sort of, it's very difficult at that point as well. And I certainly think in terms of the number of objections that we will come on to shortly from residents around the area, with that, as it was originally sort of submitted, I would share those concerns as well with that, because it was certainly a dangerous sort of junction. So with that, you've also got within your, as I just come forward again, so this is the red line, just to sort of take it into a sort of bit more context there. And then sort of bearing in mind that the plan that I showed you earlier, the access then would come through here and then twist around at this point. Now, within members' packs, if you then look on to page 38, you can see a bit more detail. Read for yourself, really, what's actually proposed in terms of that revised sort of road junction. And I'll come on to that shortly on in terms of the plan on the screen. But again, that will help you to sort of understand what's being proposed with this the new junction coming out onto Somerton Road there. What you will then find is that you can sort of see within the committee report plan that this area then will be sort of cut off with bollards in there to stop traffic actually travelling down from this direction, from the direction of the school, to actually come down to Stave Road. What they're going to do is actually come in at this point here and then enter this direction here. So what will happen is that the visibility in Somerton Road in both directions is much improved. And certainly as you stand there today, you've got there's a couple of trees on here as well, and we'll actually sort of go between the two trees on the side there. The land then will actually be sort of forms part of the area which is owned by this sort of property here, but the land will then, and also part of the land which is sort of in unknown ownership at the moment, but all the correct notices have been served, and then this will then be dedicated to as highway land. So just coming back again, and this is the access which you can see, which is a coloured up version of the one that you've actually got on page 38 in your committee report. So the new access then is actually sort of created at this point here. The land either side will be dedicated to highway land. You've then got sort of, as it then sort of comes around with sort of an in and out there as well, if you like, there to highway standards. So visibility in both directions is good. And you'll see that highways have got fully supportive of this proposal now, and it meets the standards that they require for a new junction at this point now. And that's a copy of the plan that you actually have within your committee report. Just running back here now, I'm just showing you sort of photographs of what's proposed on the site. And again, within the report, it's mentioned about the fact that this has had, as well as the junction sort of being revised and with the new application, there's a number of changes that sort of, which again are highlighted within the report, that have taken place to the actual designs themselves as well. Originally, these were all sort of flat roofs on there, with sedum roofs as well incorporated into that. All of the properties now have actually got pitch roofs on there, and they'll be incorporating various sort of solar panels, as you can see within this report as well, on to make it more sustainable as well. And you can see the various landscaping around the area. Again, this is a fairly modern design, and you'll recall, members will recall that at the Somerton Road there, we also had a design which is sort of incorporating sort of modern designs, which is yet to be sort of commenced, which again, as I mentioned, incorporates this sort of new, fairly modern design on there. This is just sort of, in terms of the actual design themselves, I think the illustrations do sort of more justice to the actual design and then the submitted drawings here. So, and again, as I mentioned, there's sort of various sort of sizes of dwellings on the site there. I'll just run through these quickly because as I say, they don't really sort of help to sort of show fully what you'd actually get on the site there. Just where you can see, just on the corner here, where I'm just at this point here, I'll just sort of emphasize this. This is where these sort of, each of these, the dwelling type will actually go, actually within the development itself there. Overlooking is sort of fairly sort of is minimized by these designs as well. I'll just come back again there and you can just sort of see that what you actually have is that these are the two-story elements in here with sort of single-story bits at the back there. And you can sort of see in these wrapping around the buildings. And again, with these ones here, these would then be at this sort of point here. So when we went back, so going back to the aerial photograph, this is the sort of strip of land that we saw running down the side in between the application site and the existing properties in Downgate Lane there. And again, sort of just running back there again, so you can sort of see these are the sort of the flat bits at the back there. These are the two-story bits. So again, they have been sort of introduced to sort of try and minimize that overlooking with either single sort of windows on the side there or taking sort of windows out or having no windows in terms of overlooking there. So just running through again. Just before I go back, I'll take you back again on this, and then I'll take you back to the committee report. So this is what we're looking at. This is Stave Road, Somerton Road that we're looking at, and the application site is behind us. And this is going down Downgate Lane sort of track, and then looking across at the site. And when I mentioned about the open space being down here, partly down there, the right-of-way runs down the side here and then round there. The Broads Authority area is over here. And you'll see within your committee report that the Broads have made no objection to this proposal. And then just looking back again, this is actually taken from with the Scout Hut behind us and then looking over to Downgate Lane. And I mentioned about the sort of the strip of open space running down, or greenery running down the side, which is not actually part of the application site. And that's the piece there. And then you can see sort of two properties further down here as well. And then this is looking across with the Scout Hut behind us with Downgate Lane running down the side here again, and then running around the side with the footpath running along the side there. So again, sort of a mix of sort of properties around the area. And this gives you an idea of just how the land sort of lies there as well. You can sort of see that it sort of it falls away from the from Somerton Road, and then it sort of hits a little and then dips down again. And as it goes down towards that sort of right away at the back. And this is going back to the entrance again. So the Scout Hut is just over the side here. The new entrance would come in this point here. And there's Stave Road running along there. It will then sort of, and these are the existing properties in Stave Road, which you'll see later on again. So the junction would come out of here and then sort of turn left slightly and then go back onto Somerton Road, avoiding these trees at this point. And again, this is just looking to the Scout Hut and to the left-hand side, and this is where the new car parking would go. This is looking at Stave Road, and bearing in mind there were there's builders running along, working on the buildings, new scaffolding roofing at this particular time when these photographs was taken back in March there. But what it does do is actually illustrate how, again, some of the concerns are about Stave Road and how narrow it is and how sort of cars park along that road. And there's a sign notice on the slide there. So in terms of going back to your sort of where you are on page 38 there, and this new access road, the new junction would be over here. So running around here, at this point here, then the road will actually be blocked off with sort of timber pollards. And again, you can sort of see that work was carrying on the new roofing projects for those houses there. Let's look around the application site again, back to Stave Road where you saw those houses being sort of worked on. So this is the rear of those properties. Those properties at this point here, running along here, on average, you've probably got sort of 30-meter rear gardens from the bottom of the garden to the rear of the premises, the property there. And you can see some of the planting running along here as well. Some which is on the application side, but majority of which is actually in the adjoining residential properties as well there. And that's that right of way would then run down the side here. And just looking across, you can't see that particularly well. And that's sort of, again, looking back at those properties. And you can, and again, the purpose of this is just to show that the way the land lies as well in relationship to those, and show the rear of those properties. And also this is Damgate Lane, properties there on Bensley, which front on the Bensley Road there as well, I believe it is. And you can see that those are a mixture of sort of houses at this point here and then bungalows at that point there. And now we're back onto Somerton Road. So the access point would sort of come across this green area here. And then we're now looking up now to where the school is at that point there. And this is, again, this area will then be blocked off. The only access to this point here will be sort of to serve these properties that you see sort of fronting onto them. We've got sort of access points. If I can just go back to the committee report now, and just to run through various bits and pieces, and I'll just get the aerial photograph up again. Sorry, it's taking some time to get up there. So if I take it from the beginning again there, and as we're saying that, as I mentioned in the report, this is grade 1 agricultural land again, and which it seems to be happening on these sort of these greenfield sites. It actually abuts the development boundary, but you can we just sort of runs around the edge of the red line, if you like there. You can also see how you've actually got sort of other patterns in development around the area as well there. In total, it says at 2.2, paragraph 2.2, on page 12, it says it's 2.4 hectares of land, and where it's located there. I've been through all the various sort of bits and pieces of its setting and what have you in there as well. Just at talking about the proposal, sort of paragraph 3.1. Again, this application is sort of incorporating sort of a number of put by the applicant, a number of sustainable sort of aspects to the development there. Sustainable homes equipped with PVC solar panels, which I mentioned earlier, and ground source heat pumps. The details of those would need to be sort of put in if the application is approved. Affordable housing will aim to exceed the council's affordable housing requirement by providing 24 affordable housing units across the site. And bearing in mind that up here we're looking at 20%. Sustainable drainage, I mentioned that as well. Off-site construction, each dwelling will be constructed from prefabricated panels, reducing noise and disturbance to neighbours and construction times. Landscape setting provision of dwellings that are integrated into the landscape with large areas of public open space and semi-mature trees and dwellings built to lifetime home standards. I mentioned about the new access into the site there. At page, it's paragraph 3.6, we then sort of talk about in terms of the junction and the application there, you've got the various comments from sort of Norfolk County Council, but essentially what this new junction does is provide a new priority T junction from the site access onto Stave Road to realign the existing priority T junction onto Somerton Road to the south, utilising the existing verge, and that's the drawing that we sort of you have in the committee report as well. The northern edge of Stave Road will be stopped up with timber bollards, as I mentioned those as well, to create a barrier to vehicles. And I mentioned again about the properties that can actually be served off it. Construction of a new footpath linking Stave Road and Somerton Road. And the existing curb line of Stave Road will be moved out of its northern end to create a new carriageway edge with Somerton Road there. So all of those things, and actually as part of this sort of new application, revised application there. Moving on to the, there's various reports on page 14 which have been submitted with the application. So I won't go through all of those, but you can read those for yourself, and also the relevant planning history as well at paragraph 4.1. And essentially the only thing that's really been on here is the new Scout building was approved in 2006 and a revised proposal back in sort of 2019 for it as well, which has now been approved as well. Now it's the consultations at paragraph 5 there and section 5, and it says that Martham Parish Council, a full copy is attached to this report. They're not attached to the report, they're actually incorporated into this report. So all of those sort of comments that you see from that 5.2 onwards are all the Parish Council's comments there. And again, you can see that they are sort of concerned about the sort of the proposal there. I won't propose to go through all there. But again, they're concerned about the additional housing that's been going on in Martham over the past, or planning permissions that have been granted over the past few years on the site there. So they, and they're concerned that they're reaching their sort of limit, if you like, and the impact upon the sort of the additional, the infrastructure within Martham itself there. They also look at the various comment on the various sort of housing land availabilities assessments that have been taking place in the past. And again, you can sort of read that for yourself there. And they're also looking forward at page 5.5, and they're talking about the fact that the emerging plan as well. And again, as ever, and we sort of mentioned the emerging plan at the moment has got limited weight because it hasn't been fully adopted and is yet to be sort of submitted to the planning inspectorate. So the weight that you can sort of give to that is fairly limited at this point. And again, at sort of 5.6, they say as an alternative to this proposal, we would support the construction of houses built on the sites located within the village development limits if it was ensured that these were affordable houses for local people and fulfilled the percentage required within the local plan. Certainly this proposal before us is, as I mentioned, is abutting the actual village development limit, but is not actually within it itself there. But But certainly, if you then sort of refer to the potential allocations in there, which is what I think they're looking at there because of the reference to 5.5, is that that then does show a number of new allocations in there, but being based upon permissions that have already been granted at the present time. But again, you have to actually decide this particular application on its individual merits and give limited weight to those potential new allocations there. They also talk at 5.6 as well about the within that sort of looking at sort of sites under the housing land availability assessment at 214 and local plan sort of consultation there as well, that this site was sort of looked at and considered as part of a potential allocation in the local plan, but it wasn't actually included at that stage. It wasn't included in it because, as the Parish Council point out here, it's constrained by an unsuitable access, potential for to be prominent to the setting of the Broads Authority area. At that time, again, this new revised application or revised access wasn't actually on the table, and this has sort of come out really sort of later on. So again, it was actually casting doubt about including that as part of the allocation because it hadn't been demonstrated at that particular time that you could actually gain an access to the site, serving the site, which would then be sort of supported by the Highway Authority. So things have moved on from that point of view. In terms of the Broads, I mentioned earlier also that you can actually sort of, they've got no objection to this proposal. And that consultation is sort of recorded within the committee report there. And again, they then talk about the additional sort of pressure within Martham and the number of houses that have been sort of granted consent over the years on that. And then just coming back to this particular point about the Stave Road again there. Further issues raised, and I'll just read this one out again. Further issues raised which affect the community as a whole include the inadequacy of the road access onto Stave Road in accommodating increases in traffic. There are parts of the road where widening is not possible, so that there are concerns about the safety of school children walking to both the primary and the high school via Stave Road daily there. So again, that's an existing problem that sort of the county council, the parish council are highlighting, but the county council in their response don't regard that is an existing situation. And what they're looking at is the impact of this new proposal in conjunction with this new access on the local roads there. And they are satisfied that there's no sort of adverse impact from that, subject to making sure that this new junction is linked to any new residential development at that point. And again, they're also concerned at 5.9 and the second part, 5.10, I should say. In addition, the parish council is concerned about the limited public access or transport available for access to the nearest train station in Achill. And as Norfolk County Council's recent decisions have been made to reduce or remove bus services from Norfolk villages. This would limit opportunities for residents of the new development to travel by public transport and increase the need for the use of cars, furthermore increasing traffic and congestion within the village. They then raise this question about the land being sort of at 5.11 as well, at least by from Great Yarmouth Council by the Martham Parish Council, and that's addressed within the report there as well, which is really essentially about the scout hut, which nothing will change on that. And if anything, it'll be enhanced in terms of the new car parking arrangements for it. Just moving then on to the sort of, and then there's a couple of more comments from sort of the Parish Council at 5.12 and 5.13. And I'll then move on to sort of 5.14 there, and which is really the public representations received. So it's received to the original application and then to this revised application as well, in terms of amendments actually sort of made to the junction, and then to the sort of various improvements to the actual design as well. At 514 there, so it's actually sort of says that in terms of the original, the application for residential on its own there, 124 objections were received to the application. And then to the junction, a further 6 objections have been received as well. But overall, I think just sort of looking at those, combining those two sort of objections to, or two applications together and summarize them all, which we've done, sort of done in the report there really. And again, this sort of brings out the crux of what people are concerned with around the area. And so I'll just run through those, because again, for people who are then sort of listening and don't have access to the agenda there. Any new development will place further demands on local facilities. The proposal is contrary to current policies in the local plan. Impact on local facilities and infrastructure. Martham both socially and physically cannot cope. Insufficient demand for further housing, put additional, for further housing. Put additional responses there. I don't quite understand what I've written there. Schools, doctors, dentists cannot cope. Again, about the opening hours of the surgery as well. More housing is not needed. 700 homes already granted in outline. So why do we need more houses? Martham will no longer be a village, but a town. There are no jobs to warrant further housing in the village. Do not need the additional traffic going through the village. Will add to the congestion that already occurs, particularly at school dropping off and picking up times, with Stave Road being used as a bolt hole and is severely overloaded with vehicles as a consequence. We are fast becoming too large for the infrastructure we have. When do we as the inhabitants get to say enough is enough? Unhappy about the unobstructed view at the back of our gardens, and worried that any the access will be compromised, will compromise road safety and access and parking there. And again, I've been through a number of those aspects again, but again, it's for members to actually take on board those and give sort of due weight as they deem appropriate to those objections. Just running through again, just picking up on page 17, you've then got the statutory consultees responses, and we've got Norfolk County Council, and you'll see within that on page 17 that they've got no objection to the proposal in terms of impact upon the education facilities in the area. And again, within that, they put down the sort of the spare capacity for each of those schools in there. They put down, first of all, again, for people who don't have an agenda before them, they set out what the actual site will generate using sort of a tried and trusted formula there. And then they then sort of look at that, judge that against the spare capacity within the school spaces, within the schools. And again, it's showing that there is sort of existing capacity within those schools. And again, it's taken on board other sort of development in the area as well there. So there's no education requirements in that regard. The fire service again sort of pick up this thing about sort of a fire hydrant on the site there, which is standard for these. And again, this will be covered by condition, would be covered by condition there. There's also again about library provision actually within the site, which would sort of library provision. Again, each of these sort of at £75 per dwelling, and we'll put a sort of to help to increase the stock at the Martham Library there. We've also got various comments then from the sort of County Council and Environment sort of section as well. They're looking at the public rights of way, Norfolk Trails and ecology networks. I've mentioned those already, so I won't really go back over those again. Specifically, it's sort of just above sort of paragraph 6.3 on page 19 there. Again, they're actually looking to actually enhance the footpath around there. It's footpath number 3, and I mentioned earlier about this sort of footpath link from the development on the open space through onto footpath 3, and the applicants have addressed that within this committee report, within the application. Again, Historic Environment have made various comments on there, and standard sort of conditions required there as well. 6.4, we then sort of moved down to the actual sort of the junction proposal in it. And again, it's confirming really that highways have got no objection to the proposal, provided it's carried out in accordance with those submitted drawings there, and subject to all the final details actually being agreed. So that will be sort of curbs and this type of thing in there before the real sort of nitty gritty before it goes ahead on there. I mentioned public right of way. I mentioned the green infrastructure offer as well. The local lead flood authority have made no comment in terms of the sustainable drainage on the site there, because it sort of falls under their sort of threshold for commenting on there. A drainage sort of strategy has been submitted with the application, and certainly there's no signs of well, on our sort of the flood risk maps of any time that this area is sort of prone to flooding in there. So, and the drainage strategy put forward demonstrates that the site itself does actually drain properly and can be sort of accommodate the sustainable drainage systems and sort of mentioned in there. So that would be actually for the development itself. The roads and what have you there would then be covered by the county council and their highway requirements as well, and covered by those and be adopted by them as part of the section 38 on that. But again, any approval would need to be sort of covered, sort of subject to those final details being submitted on there. Again, Anglian Water have got no comment about it other than, no objection to it. And they say again that there is capacity within the existing foul system. And again, we hear that every time. So, and then mention again, Broads Authority, no objection to it. The NHS, no response received. There's then a number of sort of internal sort of responses as well there. And again, it's the usual stuff about for environmental health, about conditions regarding sort of noise restrictions on sort of working hours and what have you there. And also making sure that any potential dust is controlled during sort of construction, and the impact on air quality again there. I would mention, of course, again, as we mentioned at the last committee, that I think I may have mentioned at the last committee that there's a government sort of announcement again about sort of being flexible on working hours for construction sites at the moment as well, and allowing in sort of, in most cases, sort of development to go on till 9 o'clock at night there. But the standard construction condition that goes on there was normally 7:30 in the morning to sort of 6:30 of an evening there. So, and again, initially we'll be looking to impose anything upon those if the application is approved and subject to that flexibility that the government is requiring or requesting as well. Again, just running through briefly, we sort of talk about the various policies in the local plan there again, and members will be familiar with those, and I won't go through them at length, but again, it comes down again to this sort of the 5-year supply, and whether or not we have a sort of deliverable 5-year supply. At the moment, where the published figure is 3.42, and so we're still sort of short of the 5-year supply. And so at the present time, I've mentioned in the reports a number of conditions, number of policies there, which I think sort of relevant to this application at the moment, and the ones that I consider to be sort of out of date in terms of the sort of certainly the housing and policies, and the ones that restricts development in the open countryside. But again, you have to, I emphasize this again as we have previously, you still have to look at the development policies in the local plan as a whole there. And it doesn't mean to say that other policies are no longer relevant, but it's the weight that you then accord them as sort of will be down to members to sort of to take into account, will be to give to those particular policies. Sorry about that. And again, I outlined those actually within the committee report there. It's about local finance considerations at page 24. And again, there's none that really sort of, and we have to put this in a sort of as part and parcel again for members to sort of to consider. In this instance, there's success at the final gain, which would be from sort of community tax and all this sort of stuff in there. Is that there's success that financial gain does not play a part in the recommendation for determination of this application there. At 8.2, we mentioned about this sort of ransom strictness running through the land there, but this doesn't actually sort of impact upon the consideration of this application there. And if the development goes ahead, then there will be a sort of a payment to be made to the council in terms of gaining access to that sort of land. But as I say, that as far as a recommendation is concerned, and for members as well, and this sort of determination of this application is not a matter for consideration there. At 8.2 and 8.3 then sort of sets it out a little bit more about that. Now at section 9, we then talk about the habitats assessment again on this, and one of these has been sort of submitted. Natural England and the County Council ecologists on our behalf has also sort of given us sort of the all clear on this in terms of it complying with our sort of policies. And the I can then say at 9.3, the Great Yarmouth as the competent authority has adequate information to carry out the appropriate assessment, and concludes that any adverse impacts upon the development can be addressed via the Nature 2000 mitigation strategy and the payment of £110 per dwelling. And so that again would actually form for a part of any legal agreement, any approval going forward and legal agreement to make sure that that is forthcoming. And that's really sort of important. And again, when we look at the tilted balance and whether or not this site can be regarded as a sustainable site, from that point of view, we're then saying it is. Then sort of at 10.1, run through the various assessments of the proposal again in there. And most of those things I've already sort of picked out. But just again, looking at the principle of development, I've been through that. I mentioned at sort of 10.6 about the 5-year supply and the 3.42 that we have published at the present time, and the delivery test, and the weight that when you then look at this in the context of paragraph 10.7, and in weighing the material considerations of this application, considerable weight must be given to paragraph 11D of the National Planning Policy Framework that states that where policies which are most important for determining the application are out of date, permission should be granted unless any adverse effects would be significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits there. And again, I've been through those from the point of view in terms of the actual location of the site and what this actually can deliver in terms of, and this does appear to be a deliverable site, and the applicants are saying that they can sort of push on and build it out fairly quickly there. And again, as ever, we then bring out this 10.8 about this sort of the Waverden sort of properties judgment. And again, I won't go into that because I've just sort of been through that again there. But again, that sort of refers to the out-of-date sort of policies, and then where the tilted balance does or does not apply there. So we're saying in this instance that the tilted balance does apply and it is a sustainable location. Page 28, again, we run through all the sort of local plan policies, and then it's then talking about the sort of strategy for the area in terms of where we expect to sort of under the core strategy, where we expect houses to be delivered within the borough. And within the primary villages, of which this is one, then 30% of the sort of new residential development will go into these areas. And again, I've got sort of Hemsby in there for some reason. It should be saying Martham. So I apologise for that. It should be saying Martham, not sort of Hemsby at 10.14. And again, I then talk about the mix of dwellings in there. Again, it then moves on sort of on page 29 to talk about the various other policies that you have to take into consideration when you're determining this application. And again, it's for members to bear in mind the way that they can actually sort of afford to give to each of those policies, bearing in mind the one about sort of the housing side of things in there. On page 30, we then sort of talk about the design here. and how it's actually been changed the application since it was actually sort of submitted, and then talk also about the additional sort of aspects to make this sort of sustainable, including the solar panels and what have you there. Just to mention about the materials in here as well. When this first came in there was lots of sort of timber boarding about there. So more brick has been added to the material palette alongside the sort of timber boarding to make it sort of more of a sort of the sort of vernacular sort of materials that you find in a locality there, notwithstanding the design that you see before you as well. I mentioned about the highway stuff in there. And just sort of then pulling up now, just coming to a concluding certainly my presentation there. On page 31, again, we sort of talk about the sustainability of the site. It is located in a sustainable location, being close to the village centre. And Martham, as I mentioned earlier, is identified in the local plan as a large village in the borough, which can sort of work with a range of facilities. And the county council has then sort of said that there's capacity in the existing school. I've been through the various sort of local objections there, but they're being reiterated again at paragraph 10.30. And again, sort of bringing out their sort of concerns. And again, members will need to sort of look at that and consider the weight that they actually put to that. Now, I'll show you just some sort of slides shortly of sort of, again, looking along Somerton Road there and how what's sort of traffic is sort of certainly in terms of when I visited the site, we've also got some additional ones which have been we've asked to present by the applicants in there. But I asked you again to bear in mind what the residents have said about the traffic along the way there as well. And that's sort of summarised in that very sort of within the letters of objection there. All of these letters as well can be seen on sort of online as well there. And I have to say just recently this weekend as well, we've also had the website has been sort of upgraded, so it's far easier to access and view each of those letters of objection and the general plans in general on there now. So I then sort of tend to talk about the planning balance and come down in favour of sort of supporting this application there for the various reasons sort of set down there, and concluding that subject to the various conditions that you actually see within the committee report, and also a Section 106 agreement as well, which have, as I've outlined in Section 11 there, which will cover sort of library books, green infrastructure contribution, habitat assessments money, affordable housing, open space, and management on the site, and the standard stuff on there in terms of on-site management as well with that. And so I will conclude there, Chairman, that for the reasons that you can see with the recommendation on page 13, and the recommendations are I put forward for both applications. And so that's for 13.1 is for the actual development itself, and 13.2 is actually for the junction there. Now, as I say, you can't, certainly you can the choice is to approve the application for residential. If you approve the application for residential, then you also have to approve the junction itself, because without the junction, then we have an objection from highways to the residential as submitted there. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Dean, for that very detailed presentation. I just want to invite any councillors now to, if they've got any technical questions to ask Dean, they just raise their hand and Sammy will let you in. Thank you.
Where are we?
Dean, could I just ask you to stop sharing your screen? I just can't see the participant. Sorry.
Oh, that's got caught. Oh.
It's okay, Chairman. I can confirm we've got Councillor Hammond. I can see the hands now, so it's fine.
Okay. Councillor Hammond.
Yes, good afternoon. I've been working in Martham for the last 8 months, and Stave Road along that part is absolutely diabolical. It's too narrow. Cars are parked there nearly all the while. During lockdown, they're not workers' vehicles, they are residents' vehicles parked there. It's a slalom run. And I've also seen it during school time when you've got school kids and parents trying to get up and down that road, and it's an absolute nightmare. And I think someone would end up getting killed because even though we're proposing a change in the junction, we're not widening Stave Road.
Councillor Hammond, is this a technical question about the application?
Well, can they look at using Damgate Lane, back lane, as an access rather than Stave Road at all? So they don't even come through Stave Road, they go straight out onto Somerton Road.
Okay.
That's the question and the reason behind it.
Dean?
So I'd have to go back to the county. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Certainly the county council don't believe that there's a concern in that regard. And there's certainly, as part of this proposal, there's no suggestion that Stave Road itself would actually be widened.
Okay.
Chairman, we have a question from Councillor T. Wright.
Yes, Councillor Tony Wright.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a couple of questions to Dean. The first one is, how much of our Grade 1 agricultural land has got to be taken up before we say enough is enough? Because this is a regular thing that I raise, that we seem to be giving away Grade 1 agricultural land time after time to these applications. And the second one is, with regard to the plans where the play area is, it is where the drainage system is. Is that an open drainage area because it seems very, very close to the play area, or is it going to be all enclosed?
Certainly, in terms of the play area, I think we need to make sure that as we have on other sites there, that it actually is secure. And if I sort of go back to the one that we'd had at East England Way in Clayton High School, there's a fence actually goes round there. And depending again on how deep that is, but certainly the one at sort of Clayton we had, it was about sort of potentially about 3 feet deep on there. So again, we need to look in that, but I think we would certainly need to have something there which secured it from the play area. So I'd agree with that. Yeah. And that would need to be sort of written into any proposal of approval that members may have. In terms of the agricultural Grade 1 land, I don't actually have the figures to hand on that, but I think we certainly had this question when we were looking at sort of agricultural land as a whole within Norfolk there, and it was still overall it was still a fairly low percentage, and I think the actual percentage was still below sort of 1% of the agricultural land had actually been sort of taken up by those proposals. But I'm quite willing to go back to that and look at that one again to give you an updated figure on that. But that was from what I've got from memory on there anyway.
Okay.
Yep. Chairman, we have Councillor Bird.
Councillor Bird.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to agree with Paul Hammond's observations. I've used that area several times this year.
Councillor Bird. Councillor Bird. Is this a technical question, please? We will discuss this in the debate. Is this a technical question?
I believe the work being done on the highway is a risk. And I think I can't understand why you're putting bollards on the road to stop the eastern flow of traffic when you could put it as a bus stop and not waste the space. But I don't believe, I think it's an overdevelopment, it's minimalistic, and it will suit the wrong sort of people. Thank you.
Can I come back on that?
Yep.
just obviously what you need to do, we need to listen to the objectors along the way and also the applicants on that before we actually sort of get to the debate on the application itself there. So if you could just limit it to the technical questions at the moment about the actual application, I'd be grateful.
Yeah.
Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just asking about the ground source heating. The plots of land look rather small. Are they going to do lateral ground source heating or vertical by drilling?
At the moment, there's no details of those, and they'll need to come in as a sort of either part of the application later on or as a separate application for it. But
I just think it's something that needs to be looked at in advance because the garden is small and you need quite a lot run of pipe.
So I can't answer at the moment because the details aren't there. It's actually just sort of they're put down as something that they're proposing, but the details aren't actually within the application pack.
Okay.
Yeah. Chairman, we now have Councillor Mogford. I can confirm, unfortunately, Councillor Mogford joined just after the officer started the application. So he can speak on the matter, but unfortunately he won't be able to vote.
Yeah. Councillor Mogford.
Oh, that's a pity, Chairman, because I was fighting to get online for various technical reasons. Yes, I'm concerned, as someone else just said, about the drain, if that is open, because even though they put a fence around it, children tend to kick balls which go over fences, and drains these days, draining estates, are usually quite deep with very steep sides, and I can see little children quite easily having a problem just there. I'd like to comment on the school situation.
Councillor Mogford.
Yes.
Councillor, is this a technical question to the planning officer?
Yes, it is a technical question, actually. We're saying we have plenty of accommodation in the school, but we really haven't, because if this permission goes ahead, you've got a potential of yet another outline permission at Hemsby, which is going to give us about 50, an overload of 50 places in the school. The school won't be able to cope anymore. I think it's the wrong. I don't object to the development per se, but it's in the wrong place in the village, and it's just too much on that road. It's overdevelopment in that area of the village.
Okay.
That's it, Chairman. Leave it with you. Sorry, I can't vote.
Anyone else? Okay, there's no other hands raised. So at this stage, I now invite Sophie Payne as agent for the application to bring her forward to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I go ahead, Sammy?
Yeah, so Sophie, you have 5 minutes. I will let you know when there's about 30 seconds remaining, all right?
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, members of Planning Committee. I'm Sophie Payne from Turley, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant EPC Buildings Limited in my capacity as their planning consultant. We appreciate the committee agreeing to consider these applications at this meeting. I'd just like to take the opportunity to briefly take you through the key elements of the scheme, and I'll try not to recap too much on what Dean's kindly presented to you very well already. The applicant specialises in building energy efficient homes, and it's an ethos which goes to the heart of this scheme from Artham. The design and construction of the homes use the highest quality materials and the very latest technology. Using modern methods of construction, the scheme can deliver homes faster and with a reduced reliance on the grid for energy for all households. The integration of renewable energy technologies in every home will result in reduced energy demands and lower energy bills for the future occupants. For construction, it actually means a heavily reduced construction period, and it's positive for residents and the local community, as it means there'll be fewer movements to and from the site than you'd expect maybe on a traditional scheme, approximately about 40% less. The scheme will deliver 11 affordable homes, and that equates to 24% of the overall amount of housing, which is in excess of the minimum of 20%. The council's housing officers had a look at this and is supportive of the mix and the tenure of these affordable homes, and also their location within the overall scheme. During the course of the determination of the application, we've obviously tried to listen to comments raised by residents and officers with respect to the design of the proposed homes. And as it's been set out to you, we have amended the roofs to pitches, and we agree those are more in character with the local area. We do still have some flat roofs over the single story elements, which contain cedar roofs as well to cope with the energy efficiency side of things. We have looked to review materials, and we've included more brick to take this into consideration with the local area. The scheme is landscape-led, with the site entrance opening up to a tree-lined avenue incorporating the surface water drainage features on the site. The two areas of open space provide a greater area than required by planning policy, and the green edge to the landscape beyond, with the pedestrian route through to the public right-of-way supported by the board's authority. And we can deal with the suds basin as picked up in the earlier comments by members. The landscaping will also contribute to a richer variety of habitats than the existing site for wildlife. The outdoor space associated with the Scout Hut has been relocated to the north of the building. This is to enable vehicle access into the site, but also benefits the Scouts in that the outdoor space is far enough from the residential properties that they can enjoy this space during the day and night for their activities without disturbing any residents. And the existing Scout Hut car park will also be improved with a new vehicle access and laid out to improve parking arrangements. As touched upon, we've obviously been having discussions with the borough and the county regarding the residential application, and it did become clear that the junction of Somerton and Stave Road would need to be improved given the current difficulties with the existing junction. We also understand obviously the concerns of local residents about highway safety in the area, and that school children walk along Stave Road and Somerton Road to reach the primary and the high schools. In order to address these concerns, the junction from the proposed development has been amended since originally submitted. Instead of having priority onto Stave Road, we now propose a T-junction where the vehicles from the development will give way to traffic on Stave Road. It's anticipated that the traffic from the development will turn left onto Stave Road and onward to Somerton Road rather than turning right. Furthermore, the existing Stave Road Somerton Road junction will be stopped up and the T-junction realigned to create an improved access. As part of these works, footpaths will be improved along Stave Road, and a new path linking Stave Road and Somerton Road will be provided between the trees. Drop curbs will be installed to facilitate crossing points for all users. The works to the highway junction have been road safety audit checked, and the county councillors, the highway authorities you've heard, are supportive of the changes. The works will be carried out in agreement with them and in accordance with all of their standard specifications so that they could adopt the area in due course. As members of committee will see from the committee report, there are no outstanding technical concerns from officers to this scheme, and subject to the imposition of the appropriate conditions in section 106.
30 seconds left, Sophie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the section 106 contributions, then the applicant's most content with those. We consider that this is a sensitively designed scheme, mindful of its location within the village, and that this can deliver new homes of a really high quality, contributing to the council's housing supply. We hope it offers the opportunity for a first of its kind scheme within the district, and that it could be promoted as an exemplar scheme for energy efficiency. The application has been submitted in full, so that if approved, the scheme can be well on its way to delivering houses within 2 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Hang on a sec. Thank you, Sophie, for your detailed report. Have any councillors got any technical questions for Sophie, please? If you'd just like to raise your hands and Sammy will let you in.
Chairman, I have no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Sophie, for your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We now move to Susie Odier, who is an objector for the application.
Chairman, it doesn't appear that Sophie has joined the meeting.
Sorry?
It doesn't appear that Susie has joined the meeting, sorry.
Okay.
She was sent the link via email and confirmed she would attend, but hasn't yet joined the meeting.
Okay then. So then we move to the parish council representative, which is Mr. Paul Hooper.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Can you all hear me?
We can, Mr. Hooper. You also have 5 minutes, and I will let you know when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Before I comment on the application itself, I'd just like to point out an error in the briefing document or agenda pack that you've got. Item 6.2, the education, Norfolk County Council are not applying for any additional funds. Back in January, your committee approved an application for 47 houses sat on Reps Road. There, the county council asked for £140,000. It's easier to get money from a housing association for those affordable housing rather than a private development. Anyway, onto the development itself. I just want to put it in context. Martham is a village of about 1,600 houses. It's grown by 300 houses in the last 10 years. But in the past 4 years, your committee and its predecessors have approved planning applications for a further 500 dwellings. I repeat that, 500 dwellings. That's a third, almost a third of the size of Martham. Now we have an application for another 47 houses, which isn't within development limits. It isn't even adjacent to development limits. The only piece that is adjacent to the development limits is the road which is needed for the development. The new access road cuts across land owned by your good selves, and it's leased to Martham Parish Council, and it's used by First Martham Scout Group. And the new road comes within 3 meters of the corner of the Scout hut. That, to me, is very, very close. Stave Road is used extensively by pupils going to and from the Martham High School and also the primary school. That's why we asked for a site meeting back in March so that members could see the problem. I noticed the design has changed. More bricks, more roof trusses, more traffic. Much has been made of the fact that 24% of the development would be affordable housing, but I'd like to make a prediction here. With the amount of roadworks that are needed for this site, the developer will come back and plead poverty, and we will lose exactly the type of houses we desperately need in the village. I would ask the committee to consider 5 questions. Do you think that our one village should provide over 10% of the housing needs of the entire borough? 10%. And that's what approving this application would make it. Are you happy to sell the land, which will bring a road with potentially 100 cars within 3 meters of a building containing young children? The increase in traffic generated by the development would have serious implications on the safety of children walking to school along Stave Road. At the moment, they use Stave Road because it is safer than Somerton Road. Do you think that's acceptable? More fundamental to our democracy, what's the point of parish councils if you disregard the views they express? I urge you to reject this application, or at the very least to put it on hold until a site visit can be arranged during the school run hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper. Have we got any technical questions or any questions for Mr. Hooper from the councillors, please? If you'd just like to raise your hand and Sammy will let you in.
Yep. We have a question from Councillor Tony Wright.
Councillor Tony Wright.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a brief one to Mr. Hooper is in regard to his comment about the housing. He says this isn't the type of housing that the village needs. Surely the 24% of the social housing or the affordable housing is something that we should be looking for in that particular village. And perhaps you could also, secondly, expand on what you mean is by having this application going through would result in 10% of the allocations or the needs of housing in the borough being in Martham, because I don't think that figure's correct.
Okay. Right. Dealing with the second question first, if you look under core strategy part 2, there is 5,000 houses required under the core strategy, just over 5,000. Dean Minns will correct me if I'm wrong. We have 500 already. Another 50 makes 550, which is over 10%.
You just mentioned that if this application goes through, then that would be the 10%. That's all I queried on that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it would make it 10%. Sorry, I've forgotten your first question.
It was about you did mention regarding the affordable housing that you wanted them to build the type of the housing your village needs. That was what you had covered. I'm just asking, what type of housing is it that Martham needs that isn't going to be on there? 24% of them are going to be affordable housing.
As I said earlier, because of the amount of road works, I can see the developer coming back and saying that this will become unaffordable if they build affordable housing. This has already happened in our village. Persimmon Homes, 108 houses. We were going to have 25 affordable housing. How much have we got? 0.
Chairman, could I just ask Dean to comment on that, to whether or not this could actually be enforced? Because if it's a valid point, we don't know until everything obviously happens. Can that be enforced that there has to be 24% affordable housing on this site? Because I think it is a valid point in the village, is that we do need to have properties that are affordable by the local communities, and certainly in places such as Martham. So I'd appreciate if Dean could actually comment on that.
Yep, Dean.
Yeah, the 24% has been put forward by the applicant as this, but our requirement is 20% under our policy there, and that would be what we'd be expecting them to sign up to a 106 agreement on. At certainly 20%, 24% if they're happy to do that, and then again it would actually be incorporated into to the agreement there. But the point about it is and the Mr. Hooper's quite right, because when he talks about sort of viability of these sites, then obviously there is a viability issue that comes forward. But
sorry, officer, can I just remind members that they need to stay in their screens when we're talking, just to make sure all members stay where we can see them, please. Can
I carry on? Yeah. So that would be part and parcel of any sort of the 106 agreement and part of the condition that this application is approved. Now, within that, there's that's sort of then valid for sort of 5 years on the site. Well, it's valid for thereafter, if you like, there. But the developer can't come back within a 5-year period to actually, as things stand at the present time, to actually sort of challenge that on grounds of viability, unless we as a local authority agree to actually enter into that discussion with them on that. So so that would actually stay with the land and as part of the sort of and incorporated within the 106 agreement. Can I just pick up on the thing about the housing numbers as well? Because at the moment, we've got the emerging local plan in terms of the reduced number of dwellings that's actually sort of putting forward and going from 7,200 to this sort of 5.8 or whatever it is there. But the thing about it at the present time, we're still, the adopted plan that we have and the adopted policy that we have still remains with those 7,200 at the present time. Now, the plan will be going off to the planning inspectorate in sort of July, August time there. But again, and the policy in terms of the 5-year supply, really, what you look at the 5-year supply, and it does mean 5-year supply. So we can't even sort of start to challenge that 5-year supply until at least that our existing sort of policy with that 7,200 is out of date. So that will stay in at least until sort of December at this particular time on there. So what you still have to look at is on a percentage basis is you still look at the number of houses sort of which are there under the core strategy and not actually under the emergence strategy at the present time. Because because the 7,200 has been the one that's been approved by the planning inspectorate. And we'd need to go through the hoops on that once again in order to actually sort of reduce the number, our required number down. But we can't do that until after that 5-year period in terms of the planning legislation on that. And the local plan itself, although we will be submitting it in July, August time there to the planning inspectorate, we again won't be sort of seeing that adopted until at least sort of 2021, 2022, once it's actually been through all the sort of process with the planning inspectorate. So we have to be careful when we're banding these figures about at the moment there, and we have to stick with the figures that have sort of been adopted at the present time, and which are less than 5 years old from that point of view.
Okay, Dean. Yep. Is that all right, Tony? Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Chairman, we now have Councillor Wainwright.
Yes, Councillor Wainwright.
Yeah, just to answer one of Mr. Hooper's 5 questions. I mean, I'm also a parish councillor, and you know, parish councillors are just parish council is just consultees. I mean, they can have an opinion, but obviously, that's taken into account as any other consultee is. Unfortunately, parish councils do not have the power to decide on planning applications. That is purely down to the borough and what we're doing today. But as far as the, and Councillor Wright touched on it, I mean, you know, the developers have offered 24% of this development as affordable housing, which I think should be praised. I mean, quite clearly, they can't come back to try and change that until after 5 years. And they've already said that they're going to complete this development within 2 years. So I think it should be encouraged. And, you know, I just think as far as numbers are concerned, and Mr. Hooper talks about Martham, and people talk about, well, it's going to be not a village or town.
I could just ask Mr. Hoover to come across to places like Bradwell and see how they've developed. We've got thousands of houses, and you know, it's just the way of the world now. You know, people need houses, and unfortunately, that's the way of the world.
Thank you, Councillor Wainwright. Anyone else, Sammy?
No, that seems it, Chairman. Chairman, I just wanted to make you aware that I think we've had Susie, who was the objector, join. Would members be happy to go back to hear her objections?
Yeah, I've got no problem with that.
See you all nodding your head.
Yeah, she's there now, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome, Susie O'Dear. Are you there?
Susie, can you hear us? Sue? You can speak now, Sue. Susie? Mrs. O'Dear, can you hear us? Mrs. O'Dear? Chairman, I think we might have to move on. We can, if committee want to.
Yeah, okay, Sammy. So yes, we now move to, is there any ward councillors who wish to speak regarding this application? If they're here, please raise a hand.
Chairman, I can confirm no hands are raised.
Okay then, so we now move to the committee debate. What do you all think about this planning application? It's over to you.
Chairman, Councillor Myers.
Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like the committee to look at a couple of paragraphs within the application in your documents. And it touches a little bit on Councillor Wright's comment. Page 22A, second line, by ensuring that sufficient land of the right types is available in the right place and at the right time to support growth and improve productivity. And on page 23, under environmental objective, historic environment, including making effective use of land and helping to improve the biodiversity, natural resources prudently. That then leads me on to page 31 to 32 and 1034 to 1036. And my concern is that there are housing policy HO10 and other housing policies in which 1036 is my professional judgment, the most important policies for the determination of planning declaration overall are outdated. And the reason for them being outdated is because of not meeting the 5-year building plan. And I am concerned that this is going to set a precedent for any development. The development itself is a wonderful development. It's the percentage of affordable housing in it, the economic impact of it, with the solar panels and all of that, and the properties look wonderful and great to walk through. I am just seriously concerned that by building on grade 1 agricultural land, because we don't have sufficient properties in the pipeline to meet the 5-year plan over and above what we've got, is negating our guideline policies on determination of developments as put out in those aspects. Thank you, Chair. And I don't want to set a precedent. I'm concerned about setting a precedent by going through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Councillor Wainwright.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I don't think we would be setting a precedent because quite clearly we've done this in the past. I mean, we don't have the land supply. And there's been many developments, both in the villages and the urban areas,
well, more in the villages that have been sort of within the red line that used to be, that we passed because we don't have the land supply. So by passing this one, there would be no precedent set whatsoever. We've done it in the past, and I'm sure we'll be doing it in the future. But just coming down to a couple of points that came in that people were talking about. Obviously, looking at the situation at local schools, there's quite clearly plenty of capacity for houses that are in the pipeline and future houses that might come forward. I mean, basically, in total, I think it's about 120, 280 odd vacancies throughout the schools. Now, you know, all the people that move into these properties don't necessarily have children. And, you know, they might be coming to start a family. So I think that's a bit of a smokescreen. I'd also be interested to know what Councillor Bird's meant when he said these properties would suit the wrong sort of people. What does that mean? So I think, you know, when councillors make those sort of comments, they should be kept very careful. I've heard this in the past by councillors, the wrong type of people. And Councillor Bird said these properties would suit the wrong sort of people. So what does that actually mean? I mean, what is a wrong sort of person to move into a house in Martha? I think it's absolutely disgraceful for councils to use that type of language.
Can I reply to that? When I said that, I meant that it was very likely that very few local people would be able to obtain those sort of properties. And it would go, as most do go, to outsiders coming in who have the money to buy all these properties. I'm all for a lot of the things which you discussed a few moments ago in social housing. Yes, we need it in the outer limits, and particularly in the Martham area. However, I feel, as is being said, that at the end of the day, when the builders finish, there'll be very few of those to be used. That's all I was meaning about it.
Well, you didn't actually make that quite clear, but I mean, well, houses are built, and basically the market dictates. Now, we were looking at the Stronger Towns Fund today and the amount of offshore opportunities that are coming to the borough. There is a need for housing for both local people and people to bring economic benefit to this town. I'm an outsider. I was outsider 40 years ago when I moved in. So, you know, let's not get this thing about outsiders coming in. You know, people move throughout the country, and there isn't a wrong sort of people to buy houses in our borough.
Is there anybody else got anything to say?
Sorry, Councillor Hammond.
Councillor Hammond.
Yes, Dean showed some pictures of Stave Road with cars parked there, showing how congested it was. Now, that is what Stave Road is like nearly every day going up towards the Scout Hut. I don't see how we could pass this development putting any more traffic on that road. It's a rat run for kids during school time. Someone's going to get killed. And I've got no objection to the scheme, but I've got an objection to that road and that extra traffic on there. It's a very narrow, very congested bit of road. And anyone who lives there that's got children are going to turn to the west and go to the junior school or whatever. It's just going to increase the traffic. It's not going to reduce it. We need to be looking at another access point to that site. And as I said before, Damgate back lane would be more preferable to than going through the Scout Hut. It's straight onto the Somerton Road, and we won't be increasing any traffic on Stave Road. And
okay, thank you. Thank you.
You know, I can't make it more clearer than that. You know, I'm there every day. I've seen what it's like. It's just not acceptable. And I'm certain the residents have said the same.
Okay. Is there any more debate from councillors, please?
Yes, Chairman, my hand should be up somewhere on your screen.
Yeah,
yes,
there is a queue.
Yep.
Just bear with me, we'll go through people.
Yep.
Councillor Tony Wright.
Tony?
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I've got to say, overall, I think the scheme itself is exemplary. I just think, you know, this is the way of the future in terms of house building, certainly looking at the impact, the environmental side as well as the economical side, is to be welcomed as probably an initiative that we're going to see much more of in the future. And obviously the way that they're going to build them as well means that there's going to be less of a nuisance to people who live close by as well. There are obviously concerns, as there always are concerns about highways, and I've expressed those views over the years. And unfortunately, the Highways Authority seem to take a sort of a back view in terms of many of these particular projects. I think in particular in this one, I think the positives probably outweigh the negatives. I do take on board Mr. Hooper's point as far as the parish council is concerned with regard to the affordable housing. And I think, you know, to quote what he says, this is the type of housing that the village needs in terms of affordable housing. I think as long as we can enforce that, I think, you know, that in itself has got to be a positive in that particular area. But I do have several concerns. I think it is a pity it's this piece of land where the development's going to go. Obviously, it's one that was chosen for obvious reasons. But, you know, again, one of my main concerns is this use of grade 1 agricultural land. It's time after time after time we get applications on this type of land. And, you know, let's face it, you know, in the future, we're going to need more agricultural land so we can have homegrown produce. And if we're going to take it away for housing, then obviously it's okay putting people where we need to have people, but if you can't feed them and you have to import the food, then obviously it creates other problems. But I think on balance and overall, I think looking at the development itself, looking at the housing development, how environmentally sound that they are, and that with the affordable housing, which is a necessity in this particular case, I think that, you know, I would certainly be minded at this stage, unless there's arguments put forward otherwise. That said, you know, obviously my concerns about highways as well, to actually support this particular plan and application, but I wait to be persuaded by others.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Next, please.
Yeah, we have Councillor Mogford, then followed by Councillor Williamson, then Councillor Freeman. Councillor Mogford.
Councillor Mogford.
That's better.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Good, fine. I am a local member for Martham, and I would say that I think this proposed development is excellent in design. It's just the sort of houses that are needed. They're thermally efficient, very cheap to run. I've built 2 houses like that myself. In fact, I live in a bungalow at the moment, which is totally heated by heat pumps and virtually all powered by solar electricity. We need more of that. But when I welcome the fact that
Sorry, can I just remind members to stay seated, please?
I welcome the fact that there's such a high percentage of affordable housing in here. However, affordable housing is fine, but even if it's affordable housing, you've got to pay for it somehow, which means you've got to have a job. There is very little employment within 5 or 10 miles of Martham. The principal employer historically has always been agriculture in this village. That ceased many years ago, simply because there's hardly anybody works on the land now. In fact, this is probably the market garden of the area, but there's very few people work on the land. People have got to travel all the way into Great Yarmouth or into Norwich to work. The bus service is appalling. It means you've got to run a car. I'm actually saying that, you know, I think it's a shame that we're not sponsoring building more local small business development sites, actually. But I think this development is actually in the wrong place in the village. It should be somewhere else. It's just the wrong place. Fabulous development, will go down very well, be very popular. It's in the wrong place. It's going to be awful on that road going down to Somerton. It is very, very narrow. It's very busy, much busier than you think it is for a narrow road. And I, although I can't vote today, I hope you turn it down. But thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mogford. I just remind members, you've got to stay sat on the screen where the public can see you, that you are present all the time. Okay? So please just...
Councillor Williamson.
Could I just say, I disappeared to get a glass of water, as we can do if we're in the council chamber.
No, you cannot leave the room if you're in the council chamber. People cannot see you.
I didn't say leave the room in the council chamber. I said you can get up and get a glass of water in the council chamber.
Yes, but Councillor Wainwright, members of the public don't actually know where you've gone.
I was only gone for 2 seconds.
When we're in the council chamber,
10 minutes.
Okay, members, thank you. We can continue. We've got Councillor Williamson
when
question.
you're in the council chamber, members of the public can see you, Councillor Wainwright, and obviously they can't.
I literally went for about 5 seconds.
Okay, that's the rules. Right, who would like next, please?
Myself, I think, Chairman.
Councillor Williamson.
Councillor Williamson.
I think we should remember when we're talking about the northern villages that most of the land in the northern villages is in the higher grades of agricultural land by the nature of the geological formation underneath. So it's always the high quality land in that direction. So whenever you build in those villages, you're going to have to face the same problem whenever houses have been built. Just raise that as an issue. The second issue I think was worth considering is the fact that when people are talking about schools, any school will generate traffic. We've got it in the urban areas, especially so, even more so. These schools very often use buses to bring people in, so they have an outlet really, rather like the Hobart School at Loddon, for example. The same thing happens. So I think we have to discount those. And with regards to the congestion of cars along Stave Road, with the new junction, that actually will alleviate part of the problem. It leaves part of the Stave Road, the original part, from the sort of angled junction to be actually accessed separately. And the entrance to the new road will go through between near the trees and then directly into the thing. It will not go down Stave Road itself any particular distance. I say though, I really feel with this development, it's the first time I've seen a really, what I think, a positive green development which has been put forward to the planning committee. It's nice to see that they've got PV solar panels aligned on the roofs of the houses facing south to get the maximum benefit. I think the fact they've got ground source pumps, whether they're a borehole or whether they're lateral pipes leading into it, a really excellent form of heating. You know, air source would probably be equally as good, but ground source are particularly good. And the fact that we've got 24% affordable housing in this area must be really, really good for a village like Martham. These villages have struggled for ages, the northern villages, through having lack of building of affordable housing, and people have struggled to find accommodation. So I really welcome that. And so that's really, I think this is a really positive development. Yes, there's always a problem about using land, but it's mainly grade 1, grade 2 in the northern villages. So we have to face that fact. We can't say we'll never build another house in the northern villages. So I would fully support this going forward. And with this 24%, I think Martham is getting a really good deal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Have we somebody else, Sammy?
Yep, Councillor Freeman.
Councillor Freeman?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, like I think the majority of the committee, you know, this is a lovely development. It ticks all the boxes. Yeah, I'm very pleased to see the level of affordable housing, but I have to say my big concern is the traffic safety. And I know that the powers that be in highways tell us that's not a problem, but I drive that road regularly when the school's in operation. And to be quite honest, it's almost frightening. And you know what kids are like? Kids, they lark about and they push somebody out into the road and it's too late then. And accidents generally are caused by speed. And I just wondered, has any consideration been made to a reduction, albeit temporary, in the speed limit from down the Somerton Road where it joins into Stave Road and then goes past the school, because it is just an accident waiting to happen, in my view. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman.
Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to agree with Councillor Williamson. I mean, this is just the development that we do need. And, you know, quite clearly, we do have a problem with housing and schools, certainly in the urban areas. And, you know, you come across to Bradwell and see how the schools are so congested with traffic. And I don't think you'd find a lot of speeding on Stave Road, actually, once these houses are built. I mean, obviously, there's enforcement powers for the police to tackle that should it occur. But I think a lot of this about talking about people are going to be killed is scaremongering, basically. I mean, there's no evidence of that. I know Councillor Wright has had issues with highways before, but they've recommended this for approval. They've done their surveys. This is just the type of development we need. And to come back to Councillor Mogford's when he talks about where there's no jobs, I come back, we need jobs in Yarmouth, we need investment in Yarmouth, and hopefully the offshore wind energy sector will take up that slack. But people will only move there if there is a market. And, you know, to say that these houses are going to be empty because there's no jobs on the land anymore is just totally ridiculous. And I actually fully support this, and I would move approval once the debate is finished.
Thank you, Councillor Wainwright. Have we anybody else, Sammy?
Yep. Councillor Wright, T. Wright.
Councillor Tony Wright.
Very quickly, Chairman, just wanted to come back on one that I forgot to mention, is the issue that I raised with regard to the play area being very close to the drainage area, because for safety reasons, I'm very concerned about where that is. Obviously, we need the drainage area, but to have a play area adjacent to it, where there's a fence, I want to be sure in my mind that the planning officers, if this was to go through, are going to take that on board and ensure that this is going to be, well, as near as 100% safe as it possibly can be in terms of the children. Because I know with fences, it's seen as a challenge to some youngsters rather than as an obstacle. And I would hate to think that, you know, this has got, whether it's 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot of water in there, it is possible for youngsters to drown. And I would not want to see that happen there or anywhere. But I want to be sure in my mind that that will be addressed and that the officers will take that on board as a priority should this application go through.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Yeah, just picking up on that point, which is a very good point from Councillor Wright. Dean, you know, in my past, they've put superways underneath playgrounds with aquacell crates. Couldn't that be changed so that an aquacell crate superway is constructed either beside that playground or underneath it, and nobody would know it was actually there, nobody would fall in it. So would the council be able to do anything to work with those developers and maybe get that design changed so that could be put in there like that?
I think we can. I think we just need to get the actual sort of the overall design of it, and then we can discuss it further with them. But I certainly agree. I'd take that on board. You know, both yourself and the council Wright was saying, and I think it's important to do so.
Okay, cheers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Chairman, we have Councillor Flaxman-Taylor.
Councillor Flaxman-Taylor.
Thanks, Chairman. No, I sort of agree with most things what people have said today. I think it's a really good development, just reading through all the data and everything that we've received. And going back to what Jeff said about the schools, most schools around the whole of the borough have got 20 miles per hour outside. So, I mean, there is a cause for people now to use their common sense to slow down when they get to a school. Do you mean I've got a family that live in Martham and I travel out there regularly, and this isn't just that part of Martham, it's the whole of Martham. I think this is a really good application and I definitely will be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chairman, we now have Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just coming back on the drainage areas, the drainage ponds, we've got them all over the borough. We've had some on the old Clayton playing field site, for example, which has been constructed, and they are perfectly safe. We've got them on Beacon Park. We've got them all over the borough. If we're going to say we're not having any of these drainage points in the future, it will make actually sustainable sites very difficult to achieve. So I think we should think carefully before we start imposing upon the developers extra costs of this nature when it's unnecessary, because these will be fenced in. The Health and Safety Executive will make sure of that.
Okay, Councillor Williamson. Anybody else, Sammy?
Yep, we have Councillor Myers.
Councillor Myers?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to sort of clarify what I was trying to say earlier on, perhaps it wasn't clear. My concern is that the lack of development in the document makes the council's own housing policies, of which we make determinations on, out of date. So if that's going to be the case and we never do reach our housing targets in the 5-year plan, that means our housing policies such as the development outside development areas, which is a housing policy consideration when we're doing it, out of date. So at what point will our housing policies, HO10s and etc., actually come back in date and then be part of the material consideration?
Once we've got our 5-year supply there, obviously the new policies are coming forward. If they're adopted, particularly with the sort of reduced number of dwellings required for the future as well, then there will come a point where we will meet that 5-year supply requirement. So we have been in this position for the last 5 years or so, and since the core strategy was sort of adopted, and the government then sort of with the changing policies that account with the government as well there. But we are, there will come a point, and there's certainly we've approved a number in the past, which will actually be, along with the new allocations, will actually build so that we'll actually be in the position where the 5-year supply is deliverable.
Thank you, Dean.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. Anybody else, Sammy?
Chairman, I've got no other hands raised.
Okay, so I'm looking at the applications. Nobody else wish to say anything? No. Have we? Obviously, we've got to do them in two sections. Section A are the construction of 47 dwellings. Have we got a proposer for that one, please?
I move that, Chairman.
Yeah, so that's Councillor Williamson, and a seconder for that as well, please.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Wainwright.
Yeah, Councillor Wainwright. So we'll now move to the roll call, and Sammy will call you out.
Yep.
Okay.
So, Chairman, just to confirm, this is for application 0619 0071. /F. I'll call you by your name if I can just have a for, against, or abstain. Councillor Anderson.
For.
Councillor Bird. Councillor Bird.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Fairhead. Councillor Fairhead. Chairman, I'll come back. Oh,
sorry. Yeah, no, it's 4. Sorry, I think. Have I got there now?
Yes, lovely. Thank you. Councillor Freeman.
4.
Councillor Flaxman-Taylor.
4.
Councillor Hammond.
Against.
Councillor Carpenter.
4.
Councillor Myers.
Abstain.
Councillor Wainwright.
4.
Councillor Williamson.
4.
Councillor Tony Wright.
4.
Councillor Barbara Wright.
4.
Thank you. Chairman, that application is approved.
Okay, thanks, Sammy. So we go to section B, applications 06190606F, formation of the highway junction at Stave Road, Somerton. Again, Sammy will call your name.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Anderson.
4.
Councillor Bird.
Against.
Councillor Fairhead.
4.
Councillor Freeman.
4.
Councillor Flaxman-Taylor.
4.
Councillor Hammond.
Against.
Councillor Carpenter,
4,
Councillor Myers,
Abstain.
Councillor Wainwright,
4,
Councillor Williamson,
4,
Councillor T. Wright,
4,
Councillor B. Wright.
4,
Thank you. Chairman, that is approved.
Lovely, thanks very much. So we move to item number 5, which are the delegated decisions made between the 1st of May and the 31st of May on pages 39 to 49 of your agenda. And Dean, no other business or anything?
No.
No? Okay then.
Chairman, with the delegated decisions, is just to check that no members have any comments or objections to that, and if they don't, then we can have that on assent. I don't have any hands raised, so they can be taken on assent. Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the agenda. Thank you once again for your patience. Thanks to everyone at the council for working hard to make this possible, and see you next month. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Chairman, if I can just ask members to stay until I just let you know the live stream is finished. So I'll finish it now. So the live stream is